Hi, it's Monday, and that means that today is True Crime and Makeup Monday. We're going to close this blind because I look really, I look really bright. And we'll put on this light over here. Sorry, I didn't mean to flash it all. If I did, my bad, my bad. Anyway. So as always, there is a trigger warning. Content is graphic, it is messy, it is violent. Bad things happen. If you got a weak stomach, I suggest you don't be here. However, we are going to get started, and today we are going to cover the Texarkana Moonlight murders. And I have a feeling I'm going to stumble all over that throughout this segment, but we're going to do it anyway. The Texarkana Moonlight murders, a term coined by the contemporary press, was a series of 4 unsolved serial murders and related violent acts committed in the Texarkana region of the United States in early 1946. They were attributed to an alleged unidentified perpetrator known as the Phantom of Texarkana, the Phantom Killer, or the Phantom Slayer. This hypothetical suspect is credited with attacking 8 people, 5 of them fatally, in a 10-week period. Yeah, there's a special kind of cuckoo. Like, I mean, 10 weeks doesn't seem like a lot, but when you think about the amount of people, that's almost a person a week. Almost a person a week. And that's so sad. Like, that is a lot of people. Just saying. The attacks occurred at night on weekends between February 22nd and May 3rd. Sorry, I can't do this and see only out of one eye. Targeting heterosexual couples. The first 3 attacks occurred at lovers' lanes or quiet stretches of road in Texas. The 4th attack occurred at an isolated farmhouse in Arkansas. The murders were reported on nationally and internationally by several publications, and caused a state of panic in, Texarkana throughout the summer. Residents armed themselves and at dusk locked themselves indoors. While police strolled, police patrolled streets and neighborhoods. Stores sold out of guns, ammunition, locks, and many other protective devices, which, I mean, you know, makes sense. That happens, like, I think the same thing happened when, like, Richard Ramirez was big, like, in California. Stores sold out of, like, ammunition and weapons and whatnot, and that makes sense because, you know, people are trying to protect themselves. So yeah, makes sense. Buy them. Yeah, this black splotch here, by the way, is hair dye. We dyed my hair yesterday, and I could not get that off to save my life. So, just so you know, it's not makeup. Some youths attempted to bait and ambush the killer. It sounds like something young people would do. If we're being legit, that sounds like something young people would do. Investigations into the murders occurred. Into the murders were conducted at the city, county, state, and federal level. Over time, there have been shifting opinions by officials over whether the 1st and 4th attacks were committed by the same perpetrator. So basically saying that they weren't 100% sure that these murders were committed by one man or woman. I think for a while there was a theory that it was like a terrorist attack type thing, but because it was isolated incidents and not like, you know, government buildings, that theory was pretty quickly thrown away, and just never really looked at again as even being a possibility. The prime suspect in the case, career criminal Ewell Sweeney, was linked to the murders primarily by statements from his wife, plus additional circumstantial evidence. After Sweeney's wife refused to testify against him, prosecutors decided against pursuing murder charges. Sweeney was convicted on other charges and sentenced to a long prison sentence. Two of the lead investigators believed Sweeney was guilty of the murders. The book, The Phantom Killer, Unlocking the Mystery of the Texarkana Serial Murders, released in 2014, concludes that Sweeney is the culprit. Now, they seemed, from what I researched, they seemed pretty definitive that Sweeney was definitely the killer. But they didn't have enough evidence to back that ish up. Which, I mean, it happens. It happens. So, not really too surprised about that. But, yeah, it just seems like they didn't really have the evidence to, like, support that. But a bunch of writers and, like, reporters were just convinced that that was who had done it and whatnot. I mean, they could be right, but there was never any proof of that. The events inspired by many works, including the 1976 film, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Very nice name. Very nice name. I can't even say that's a bad choice for a name. Yeah, that's clever. Isn't it, though? And it usually... The Texarkana... Oh, the film's the basis for much of the subsequent myth and folklore around the murders. I have heard, like, some of these, like, myths or rumors or whatever about, like... It's kind of very similar to researching Jack the Ripper. There's theories everywhere. Are those theories 100% accurate? Of course not. How could they be? Nobody knows for sure who did it. Nobody was there that could tell you. Well, that's not true, because there are people that survived. You know, people are like, oh, well, they survived, and then they saw who did it, and they should be able to tell you who did it. And I'm like, it's not always that easy, though. And I have a friend who experienced the murder of her son, and she was there. She saw the person who did it, but she doesn't remember them. So, I mean, it does happen. You don't always have recollection of, you know, the, like, person, if that makes sense. Like, you're not guaranteed to know exactly who it was and what they did and why, and it's not like they're gonna sit you down and tell you the whole plan, you know. And usually, even if you manage to, like, find a suspect and you're like 100% sure and you've got evidence that points to it, most of them are going to deny doing the killing. It's not like they're gonna sit around and talk about their plans with you. Even Ted Bundy in court referred to the murders that he did as in third person. Like, he would say, oh, well, the killer probably did this, this, and this, instead of just saying, yeah, I did it. You know, it's not like they're going to, you know, help you put them away. So, just saying. The Texarkana Moonlight murders consisted of 4 violent attacks, which occurred over 10 weeks from February to May 1946. The murders occurred in and around Texarkana, Twin Cities at the border of Millard County, Arkansas, and Bowie County, Texas. All 4 attacks targeted heterosexual couples in isolated locations on weekend nights. The attacks took place at intervals of 3 to 4 weeks. Investigators speculated that the attacks were the work of an unidentified serial killer. At around 11:45 p.m. on Friday, January 22nd, Jimmy Hollis, 25, and his girlfriend, Mary Jeanne Larry, 19, parked on a secluded road outside Texarkana, Texas, after having seen a movie together. The lovers' lane was approximately 300 feet. From the last row of city homes where present-day Central Mall is located. Around 10 minutes later, a man wearing a white cloth mask. Sorry, give me just a second. I don't want to poke myself in the eye here. Which resembled a pillowcase with eye holes cut out, appeared at Hollis's driver's side door and shone a flashlight in the window. Hollis told him he had the wrong person, to which the man responded, "I don't want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say." Like, he didn't have the wrong person. He wasn't looking for anybody in particular. You just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sad. Both Hollis and Larry were ordered out of the car, and the man ordered Hollis to take off his goddamn breeches. After he complied, the man struck him twice upon the head with a firearm. Larry later told investigators that the noise was so loud she had initially thought Hollis had been shot, but when in fact she had heard his skull fracturing. Thinking the assailant wanted to rob them, Larry showed him Hollis's wallet to prove that he had no money, after which she was struck with a blunt object. The assailant ordered Larry to stand, and when she did, told her to run. Initially, Larry tried to flee towards a ditch, but the assailant ordered her to run up the road. Larry spotted an old car parked off the road, but found it empty, and was again confronted by the attacker, who asked her why she was running. When she said that he had told her to do so, he called her a liar before knocking her down and sexually assaulting her with the barrel of his gun. After the assault, Larry fled on foot, running a half-mile to a nearby house. She woke the inhabitants and phoned the police. Meanwhile, Hollis had regained consciousness and after alerted a passing motorist who also called the police. So, like, they were on it. She was on it. When she finally got free, she immediately went somewhere to get help and to call the police. And he was gone. You know, they didn't catch him, obviously, since there's more murders. But, I mean, she tried. She tried. She was on it. And, like, you couldn't ask for a more level-headed response, if we're being genuine here. You could not ask for a victim of a crime to be more level-headed and think, oh, I should call the police. You know what I mean? Hollis and Larry, within 30 minutes, Bowie County Sheriff W.H. Bill Presley and 3 other officers arrived at the scene, but the assailant had already left. Larry was hospitalized overnight for a minor head wound. Hollis was hospitalized for several days to recover from multiple skull fractures. Hollis and Larry gave slightly differing descriptions of their attacker. Larry claimed that she could see under the mask that he was a light-skinned African-American male. Hollis alternately claimed the attacker was tanned white man and around 30 years old, but conceded he could not distinguish his features as he had been blinded by a flashlight. Both agree that the assailant was around 6 feet tall. Law enforcement repeatedly challenged Larry's account and believed that she and Hollis knew the identity of their attacker and were covering for him. Richard L. Griffin, 29, and his girlfriend of 6 weeks, Polly Ann Moore, 17, were found dead in Griffin's car on the morning... That's a significant age difference. On the morning of Sunday, March 24th, by a passing motorist. The motorist saw the parked car in a lover's lane 100 yards south of U.S. Highway 67 West in Bowie County. Griffin was found between the seats on his knees with his head resting on his crossed hands and his pockets turned inside out. Moore was found sprawled face down in the back seat. There's evidence that suggests she was placed there after being killed on a blanket outside the car. Griffin had been shot twice while inside the car. Both had been shot once in the back of the head, and both were fully clothed. A blood-soaked patch of earth near the car suggested to police that they had been killed outside the car and placed back inside. Congealed blood was found covering the running board, and it had flowed through the bottom of the car door. A .32 caliber cartridge casing was also found, possibly ejected from... Sorry. Moving some stuffs around real quick. Turn this on. Possibly ejected from a pistol wrapped in a blanket. No. Oh, I have to. Give me a second. No extant reports indicate that either Griffin or Moore was examined by a pathologist. Contemporaneous local rumors said that Moore had been sexually assaulted, but modern reports refute this claim. Nova. Sorry, my dog is growling. At around 1:30 a.m. on Sunday, April 14th, Paul Martin, 17, picked up Betty Jo Booker, 15, from a musical performance at the VFW Club at West 4th and Oak Street. From a musical performance at VFW Club at West 4th and Oak Street in Texarkana. Martin's body was found at about 6:30 a.m. later that morning. So these were not like one-time isolated incidents. These were, you know, every so often. Like, so they knew pretty quickly that it was the act of a serial killer. They just obviously didn't know who did it, which, I mean, makes sense. I don't know how I feel about this makeup look, but you know what? It is what it is. Give me a second. Hey! There you go. The door is open, so God only knows. Sorry, my wife works from home, so when my dog barks, I have to go check on it. I am so sorry. Blood was found on the other side of the road by a fence. He had been shot 4 times, through the nose, through the ribs from behind, in the right hand, and through the back of the neck. Booker's body was found by a search party at about 11:30 a.m., almost 2 miles from Martin's body. Her body was behind a tree and lying on its back, fully clothed. It was posed with the right hand in the pocket of the buttoned overcoat. Booker had been shot twice, once through the chest and once in the face. The weapon used was the same as in the first double murder. a .32 automatic Colt pistol. Martin's car was found about 3 miles from Booker's body and 1.55 miles away from his body. It was parked outside the Spring Lake Park with the keys still in the ignition. Authorities were not sure who was shot first. I've gotten all this out before I started. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm usually more organized than this, but I haven't been feeling very well lately. I'm just, you know, struggling. Presley and Texas Ranger Manuel T. Gonzalez said that examinations of the bodies indicated that they had both put up a terrific struggle. Martin's friend Tom Albrighton said that he did not believe an argument had happened between the victims and that Martin had not had any enemies. On Friday, May 3rd, sometime before 9 p.m., Virgil Starks, 37, and his wife, Katie, 36, were in their home on a 500-acre farm off Highway 67 east, almost 10 miles northeast of Texarkana. Virgil was sitting in an armchair reading the newspaper when he was shot twice in the back of the head from a closed double window. Hearing the sound of broken glass, Katie came from another room and saw Virgil stand up, then slump back into his chair. When she realized he was dead, Katie ran to the crank telephone to call the police. She rang twice before being shot twice in the face from the same window. She fell, but soon regained her footing and tried to get a pistol from another room, but she was blinded by her own blood. Katie heard the killer at the back of the house and fled out the front door. She ran barefoot across the street to the home of her sister and brother-in-law. Because no one was home, she ran to neighbor A.V. Prater's house, gasped that Virgil's dead, and then collapsed. Prater shot a rifle in the air to summon another neighbor, Elmer Taylor, who Prater sent to collect his car. Taylor complied, and along with other members of the Prater family, took Katie to Michael Meagher Hospital. Katie was questioned in the operating room by Miller County Sheriff W.E. Davis, who became head of the investigation. 4 days later, Davis talked with Katie again, as she discounted a circulating rumor that Virgil had heard a car outside their home several nights in a row and feared being killed. Investigations of the attacks included numerous law enforcement officers at the city, county, state, and federal levels. Notable investigators include William Hardy, Bill Presley, the Bowie County Sheriff, who was the first lawman on the scene of the first 3 attacks. He died in 1972. Jackson Neely Jack Runnels, who died in 1966, the Texarkana Chief of Police, who was among the first called to the scenes of the 2 double murders. W.E. Davis, the Miller County Sheriff, who headed the investigation of the Starks murder. Max Andrew Tackett, who died in 1972, an Arkansas State Police detective who was first on the scene of the Starks attack and the arresting officer of the lead suspect. Tillman Byron Johnson, who died in 2008, a Miller County Sheriff's deputy who was one of the leading investigators on the case and was eventually the last surviving participant in the investigation. Manuel T. Gonzalez, who died in 1977, a captain in the Texas Ranger Division, Texas Rangers, who became the public face of the investigation. He was criticized as a showman who presented the work of other officers as his own to the press and spent a great deal of time with female reporters. 5 years after the murders, Gonzalez left the Rangers to become a technical consultant to the entertainment industry. Law enforcement repeatedly challenged Larry's account of the first attack, believing that she and Hollis knew the identity of their attacker and were covering for him. Larry returned to Texarkana after the Griffin Moore murders in hopes of helping to link the cases and identify the killer. But the Texas Rangers questioned her story and insisted that she knew who her attacker was. The struggle is real over here. Officers did not publicly connect the Hollis-Larry attack and the subsequent murders until May 11th, the day after the Texarkana Gazette published an interview with Larry, when Presley and Runnels called on the public to immediately report anyone who had unexplained absences when the murders occurred. In response to the Griffin Moore murders, police launched a citywide investigation along with the Texas and Arkansas police, the Texas Department of Public Safety, the overseeing agency of the Texas Rangers, the Miller and Cass County Sheriff's Departments, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Over 200 persons were questioned in the case. and about the same number of false leads were checked. Three people found with bloody clothing were taken into custody. All three were cleared of suspicion. In the Martin Booker case, friends, acquaintances, and several suspects were questioned by Bowie County investigators who worked in 24-hour shifts. Suspects were brought in from as far away as 100 miles. Gonzalez tried baiting the perpetrator by recruiting teenagers to sit as decoys in parked cars while officers waited nearby. Officers also volunteered as decoys with real partners or mannequins. Following the Booker Martin murders, some officers hid in trees at Spring Lake Park. In the aftermath of the Starks murder, officers from the recent area were called upon to help in the investigation. Blockades were effected on Highway 67 East. Those who had been driving in the area at the time of the slaying, along with several men found in the vicinity, were detained for questioning. By May 5th, 47 officers were working to solve the murder. On May 9th, a mobile radio station arrived with 20 Arkansas State police officers and a fleet of 10 prowl cars equipped with two-way radios to help coordinate the growing investigation. On May 11th, a teletype machine was installed in the Bowie County Sheriff's Office to connect with other law enforcement offices in Texas. The unofficial theory for a motive amongst the majority of officers was that of sex mania, as large amounts of money in the home were not taken, nor was Katie's purse. By March 30th, police had posted a $500 reward in an effort to gain any new information on the case. But this produced over 100 false leads with no fruitful clues or suspects. Within days of the Booker Martin murders, the reward fund had exceeded $1,700. It rose to $7,025 on the night of the Starks murder and passed $10,000 in the following 10 days. There was some hesitation in linking the Starks murder to the other crimes because the weapon used was a .22. Davis believed it was an automatic rifle. By November 1948, authorities no longer considered the Starks murder connected to the two double murders. The Griffin Moore murders raised public concerns but were generally taken as an isolated incident, as officials did not publicly connect the earlier Hollis-Larry attack to the murders while the Phantom Killer was active. The Martin Booker murders thus greatly alarmed the public to the likelihood of a serial murderer. The deaths of these two church-going teenagers shocked the community. Booker had been a popular high school junior, a sorority member, an officer of her high school band, a winner of scholastic, literary, and musical prizes, and a former Little Miss Texarkana. Her high school ended classes early so that hundreds of young people could attend the funerals. Curfews were set for businesses in an attempt to keep people off the streets at night. It was additionally at this point that the hypothesized serial killer was dubbed the Phantom Killer by local media. Hysteria grew in the days following the murder of Virgil Starks in his home. There was constant media coverage of the increased police activity, and the Texarkana Gazette stated on May 5th that the killer might strike again at any moment, at any place, and at anyone. For a while, police were inundated, sorry, I can't speak English, with reports of prowlers. One officer stated that nearly all of the alarm was the result of excitement, wild imagination, and near hysteria. Previously, it had been normal for houses to be left unlocked. The murders alarmed residents into taking precautions with security, from locking doors to arming themselves with guns. Some people nailed sheets over their windows, some nailed windows down, and some used screen door braces as window guards. The day after Stark's death, stores sold out of locks, guns, ammunition, window shades, and Venetian blinds. Additional items of which sales increased included window sash locks, screen door hooks, night latches, and other protective devices. Guard dogs were sought in local want ads. Because citizens were substantially nervous and armed with guns, Texarkana became a dangerous place. When calling on an address, law enforcement officers would turn on their sirens, stand in their headlights, and announce themselves to keep from being shot by a nervous homeowner. Gonzalez fueled the hysteria when he announced on May 7 that citizens should oil up their guns and see if they are loaded, and to not hesitate if they feel it necessary to use them. The fear was significant enough to spread to other cities, including Hope, Lufkin, Magnolia, and as far as Oklahoma City, where there were sales spikes for guns and axes. After 3 weeks without an associated murder, Texarkana's fear began to lessen. The concern lasted through the summer and subsided after 3 months had passed. The rampant spreading of rumors fed the panic and made the public investigations more difficult. On April 18th, Gonzalez held a press conference to dispel rumors that the murderer had been caught. He stated that the rumors circulating among the public and in the newspapers were a hindrance to the investigation and harmful to innocent persons. He stressed this again in a radio interview on May 7th. Rumors only take the officers from the main route of the investigation. It is so important that we capture this man that we cannot afford to overlook any lead, no matter how fantastic it may seem. Rumors continued to be spread through mid-May. Many believed that the slayer had been caught. Some believed he was being secretly held at the Bowie County Jail or flown to another jail. The Gazette and news offices were drowned with phone calls, both local and long distance, inquiring about the apprehension of the killer. Presley declared that innocent people were being accused of being the Phantom and asked residents to show more consideration for their fellow citizens. Though most of the town was in fear of the Phantom, some youths continued parking on deserted roads, hoping to apprehend the perpetrator. Johnson and an Arkansas state trooper were patrolling a vacant road at night when they came up to a parked car. When Johnson approached the car and noticed a couple, he introduced himself and asked if they weren't scared. The girl replied, "It's a good thing you told me who you are," and she revealed that she had been pointing a .25 ACP pistol at him. On the night of May 10th, Texarkana City police officers were alerted to a car that had been following a bus. They chased it for 3 miles before shooting the tires and arresting C.J. Lauderdale, Jr., a high school athlete. When questioned at the station, he explained that he was unaware they were policemen because they were driving an unmarked car. He said he was following the bus because he was suspicious of a passenger that had entered from a private car. On May 12th, Gonzalez gave a warning to teenage sleuths in the Gazette, saying, "It's a good way to get killed." I hate when this happens. Give me a second. I had no tablets to recall my teeth. My bad. The unidentified killer did not acquire a nickname until after the deaths of Booker and Martin. And the April 16th edition of the Texarkana Daily News, a heading read, "Phantom Killer Eludes Officers as the Investigations of Slayings Pressed." This front page story was continued on page 2 with the headline, "Phantom Slayer Eludes Police." Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jeanne Larry were the only victims able to give descriptions of their attacker. They described him as being 6 feet tall, wearing a white mask over his face with holes cut out for his eyes and mouth. Although Hollis believed he was a young, dark-tanned white man under 30 years old, Larry believed he was a light-skinned African-American. With no description from other incidents, it cannot be certain if the same perpetrator or perpetrators were responsible, though it is generally assumed that the crimes were the work of a single individual. The MO, modus operandi, established for the killer was that he attacked young couples in empty or private areas just outside city limits using a .32 caliber gun. Although the caliber used in the Starks murder was a .22, a .32 was still believed by the majority of lawmen to have been used by the Phantom. He always attacked late at night on weekends, with cooling off periods of about 3 weeks between attacks. Gonzalez stated that he and officers were dealing with a shrewd criminal who had left no stone unturned to conceal his identity and activities. He also stated that the man they were hunting was a, quote, cunning individual who would go to all lengths to avoid apprehension, end quote. At the Starks murder scene, Presley said, quote, "This killer is the luckiest person I have ever known. No one sees him, hears him in time, or can identify him in any way." Officers have said that the killer is apparently a maniac who is an expert with a gun. Victim and survivor Hollis said, "I know he's crazy. The crazy things he said made me feel that his mind was warped." Throughout the investigations of the Phantom Killer case, almost 400 suspects were arrested. There were numerous false confessions investigated by police. Tackett recalled 9 people who confessed to being the Phantom, but their statements did not agree with the facts. In the Hollis and Larry case, no suspects were apprehended. In the Griffin and Moore case, over 200 persons were questioned, and about the same number of false tips and leads were checked. 3 suspects were taken into custody for bloody clothing, 2 of whom were released after officers received satisfying explanations. The remaining suspect was held in Vernon, Texas for further investigation, but was later cleared of suspicion. U.L. Sweeney was a 29-year-old thief and counterfeiter. He was arrested in July by Tackett, who was investigating car thefts after realizing that on the night of the Griffin Moore murders, a car had been stolen in the area and a previously stolen car had been found abandoned. Tackett was able to locate the former car and arrested Sweeney's wife, Peggy, when she came to retrieve it. Peggy confessed in great detail that Sweeney was the Phantom Killer and had killed Booker and Martin. Her story changed in some details across several interviews, and police believe she was withholding information due to fear of Sweeney or of incriminating herself. Police were able to independently verify some details of Peggy's confession, such as the location of a victim's possessions, where she said UL had discarded them. There was considerable circumstantial evidence against Sweeney, but Peggy's confession was the most critical part of the case. However, Peggy recanted her confession, was considered an unreliable witness, and could not be compelled to testify against her husband. Law enforcement officers worked for 6 months trying to validate Peggy's confession and tie Sweeney to the murders. They found that on the night of the Booker-Martin murders, the Sweeneys were sleeping in their car under a bridge near San Antonio. Sweeney was never charged with murder and was instead tried and imprisoned as a habitual offender for car theft. Presley reported in his 2014 book that investigators in the Sweeney case later said that the sentence was effectively a plea bargain, though the cases filed no formal agreement. Sweeney was apparently concerned about being sentenced to death for the murders, so agreed to not contest the habitual offender charge and in fact tried to plead guilty despite the charge requiring a jury trial. Henry Booker Tension was an 18-year-old high school freshman or university freshman who died by suicide on November 14th, 1948. Well, I read that wrong. November 4th, 1948, leaving behind cryptic instructions which directed investigators to a suicide note in which Tennyson confessed to the Booker, Martin, and Starks murders. He had played trombone in the same high school band as Booker, but they were not friends. Investigators were unable to find any other evidence linking Tennyson to the murders. James Freeman, a friend of Tennyson, provided an alibi for the night of the Starks murder, stating that they had been playing cards that evening when they heard the news of the attack. Ralph B. Bowman, a 21-year-old ex-Army Air Force machine gunner, claimed to have awoken from a fugazi state of several weeks on the day of the Starks murder, with his rifle missing. He said that he heard about a suspect matching his description and hitchhiked to Los Angeles feeling like he was running from murder. On May 23rd, he told Los Angeles police that he thought he might be the Phantom. "I'm my own suspect," he said. Police arrested him, but Gonzalez stated that several parts of the man's story had little basis in fact. Bowman said that he'd been discharged from the AAF for being a psychoneurotic, and he had previously confessed to killing 3 people in Texarkana in a period of 3 days, which did not match the timeline of killings. Investigators had hoped that Booker's saxophone, which she had played the night of her murder and which was missing, might lead them to a suspect. On April 27th, a suspicious man was arrested in Corpus Christi, Texas, for trying to sell a saxophone to a music store. He had asked about selling the instrument to the store, but became evasive and fled from the store manager. Although no saxophone was found in his possession, the police found a bag of bloody clothing in his hotel room. After several days of questioning, the man was cleared as a suspect. Booker's saxophone was located on October 24th, 6 months after her murder, in underbrush near the place her body had been found. On May 8th, it was announced that an escaped German prisoner of war, who was already being hunted as a matter of routine, was considered a suspect. He was described as a stocky 24-year-old weighing 187 pounds with brown hair and blue eyes. He had stolen a car in Mount Ida, Arkansas, and attempted to buy ammunition in several eastern Oklahoma towns. The police kept searching for the POW, but it was said that he had vanished into thin air. On May 7th, a hitchhiker armed with a pistol carjacked and robbed a man, threatening to kill him and stating that he had killed 5 people in Texarkana, naming Martin and Booker. The hitchhiker went on to say that he was not finished killing people. Gonzalez said that the police were doubtful that this man was the Phantom Killer, noting that the killer had gone to lengths to conceal his identity, while the hitchhiker boasted to a living witness. On May 10th, in Atoka, Oklahoma, a man assaulted a woman in her home, stating that ranting that he might as well kill her because he had already killed 3 or 4 people, and that he was going to rape her. He then fled. A widespread search for the man included 20 officers and 160 residents. 2 days later, police arrested a suspect but did not believe this man was the Phantom. According to the man's story, he could not have been in Texarkana at the time of the Starks murder. Sammy is a pseudonym given to a long-time Texarkana resident with a good reputation and no criminal record, whom the police were reluctant to name as a suspect. He came to attention when his vehicle's tire tracks were found across the road from Martin's corpse. He failed a polygraph test, so the police decided to have him hypnotized by psychiatrist Travis Elliott. Elliott concluded Sammy had no criminal tendencies and learned Sammy had pulled his vehicle to the side of the road in order to urinate before visiting a married woman with whom he was having an affair. Concealing the affair caused Sammy to fail the polygraph test. After police verified the details, they cleared Sammy as a suspect. On May 7th at approximately 6 a.m., the body of Earl Cliff McSpadden was found on the Kansas City Southern Southern Railway tracks, 16 miles north of Texarkana near Ogden. The body's left arm and leg had been severed by a freight train a half hour earlier. The coroner's jury's verdict stated death at the hands of persons unknown and that he was dead before being placed on the railroad tracks. Because the murder is unsolved, locals have speculated that McSpadden was the Phantom's 6th victim. A prominent rumor exists claiming that McSpadden was the Phantom and had committed suicide by jumping in front of a train. Although, you know, obviously not possible since the coroner said he was dead before being placed on the railroad track. So, you know, like, that's not possible. That's the story of the Texarkana murders, which to this day are still unsolved. So, I guess if you have any details or information, considering this was quite some time ago, probably not, since most of my viewers are younger, call the Texarkana police and let them know, because they're still trying to find this person that's murdered 5 people. So that is the story of the Texarkana murders. And as always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Be cautiously kind to others and make good choices. And I'll see y'all next week. Bye.